Rise, renew, reconnect. Welcome to From the Ashes. I'm your host, Valerie Beck, and today I'm excited to introduce my friend Abe Cajudo, a true Renaissance man and problem solver. Abe's creativity spans across film, XR, music, design, and more, making him a multifaceted talent like no other. From co-writing stage productions to editing video game trailers, Abe's knack for innovation and his ability to connect ideas and people is truly inspiring. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I had making it.
The fire in the darkest night, a phoenix burns. It's ready for flight. Shadows may come, try to tear you apart, but you're the flame that ignites.
All right, welcome back to From the Ashes. So today I have my friend Abe Cajudo with me. We are both residents of Long Beach, California. He has called himself a multi-potentialite, also a multi-hyphenate creative and entrepreneur. And I know him because he helped my husband Greg with his Sake Secret campaign. And we got to meet through that. So it's been a really cool process and really good to get to know you and Stephanie, your wife. So today I get to dig a little bit deeper into your journey and your life. And welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Val.
Thank you for being here. So I always start by asking people about their From the Ashes story, but I actually went ahead and I looked at your bio before we started. And before we go into that story, I just want you to tell the audience what a multi-hyphenate creative is.
Yeah, so a multi-hyphenate is one of those terms that's going around again in a lot of sort of professional settings in terms of like workplace. It goes around the hyphen, right? When you hyphenate something, like you and I are Asian Americans. I would consider myself a Filipino hyphen American. And so a multi-hyphenate is someone who has, I would say, multiple identities or multiple ways that they think about themselves or multiple ways that they exist in the world. And so multi-hyphenate in a creative or a professional standpoint for me is I'm a director, I'm a designer, I'm a musician, I am a Filipino American, I am a foodie, and all these different things that I consider myself that, I consider that part of my identity. I consider that something that matters to me and ways that I sort of move around in the world.
Excellent. Thank you. And another cool thing that I read in your bio is that Seth Godin once called you for advice. So, what kind of advice did he call you for?
He did. So Seth Godin, for everybody who's not familiar, is one of the first, if not the first, Seth that comes up in Google when you search for the name Seth. So I think it's between him and Seth Rogen. But Seth Godin is very different than Seth Godin. Seth Rogen. Seth Godin is, I would call him an author. I would call him a marketing genius and a really thoughtful person in terms of entrepreneurship and business. And yeah, he called me for advice one time. We have mutual friends, and one of our mutual friends connected us because he was starting his first Kickstarter campaign. So this was like, several years ago, but he was starting his first Kickstarter campaign. So Seth likes to experiment with new mediums. Like he is always experimenting, whether it be like through books or through speaking on the stage or doing podcasts. And so Seth, saw this emerging sort of format of Kickstarter, and he just had no idea how to like use it or get started or whatever, but he just knew he wanted in and he wanted to experiment as he likes to do with his book releases. And so I think this particular book release was either probably denied from his publisher. Like he floated the idea to his publisher and they were like, yeah, we're not sure about this, but he really felt strongly about it. And he was like, well, maybe Kickstarter is the perfect place for me to test and try this out and show my publisher that there's demand for it. There's a demand for this topic, this book topic. And the book, I think the final title that he ended up calling it was The Icarus Deception. And that's about the story of Icarus. Are you familiar with the Greek?
Got too close to the sun.
Yeah, he got too close to the sun. So he wanted to, play with that metaphor. He did play with that metaphor. And he wrote a book about that the story of Icarus and how it relates to business and marketing and life. And he basically told a little bit about it on Kickstarter, but I guess my role in it was pre-launch. He hit me up, and he was calling several people, and he just wanted to know, like, what I liked about the platform and what I'd done in the past. And at this point, I had worked on the video for a fashion campaign. So talking about like multi-hyphenates and different identities. I was working with a emerging fashion company, and they launched their fashion brand on Kickstarter. And I directed the video, edited the video, did the motion graphics for it, and it ended up being, at the time, it was the number one most successful fashion campaign on Kickstarter, the Versalette. And Seth had seen that through our mutual friend, and he was like, "Hey, I want to know what this guy like thinks, or you know how he's able to make these successful campaigns." I think one thing that I really remembered leaving him with is like, how can you surprise and delight your backers, your Kickstarter backers? And that was a big one. That's sort of a running theme in my life, and like
Mhm.
the types of projects that I like to do. And the type of art that I like to create is like, how can you surprise people? How can you delight people? And like, how can you make them feel something and feel a certain way, whether that be joy or happiness or excitement or just like surprise or laughter. Like, I want to leave people with something that they could feel. And Seth really took that to heart. He had some really interesting rewards. One of them was something that I had no idea he was gonna do, but I just went home to my parents' house in the Bay Area. So I
Mhm.
was visiting my childhood home, and so I was getting rid of some stuff. And one of them was one of the things that I found in my room. I didn't get rid of it, but it was Seth's book from this campaign, and
Okay.
it's seriously like the largest coffee table book you've ever seen. Like, it's definitely over 30 pounds. So imagine a book that's like that big. And so it's just like obnoxiously big book. And the way that he framed it, like during the campaign, I think was like, this is a collection of my blog posts. This is a collection of my writing over like 10 years or more. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but it was a lot of pages. And the book like had to be special delivered in a huge box. Like, I think when I lifted up the box when I got it, like the book was starting to fall out. It was that heavy.
Okay.
And so I saw that in my old childhood room, and it was just a good reminder of like, oh, he went all out. Like, he did something that no one would ever expect for him to do, like in this campaign. So, you want to do a book release, like, how can you surprise and delight your audience? How can you leave them with something really memorable, really remarkable in, his words, Seth Godin's words, and have an idea worth sharing and spreading. And so that was one of the things that literally, like, is still stuck to my my old room, and I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of that thing, because it's like it's a memento, it's something to remember, like, always.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, pretty big highlight. I also want to backtrack a little bit and let's go into your origin story.
Yeah.
So, on your bio, you wrote that your lowest slump was leaving friends and the lifestyle I love to search for answers to problems we couldn't solve with our current level of thinking or collective experience. I would love to hear the story behind that slump.
Yeah, so that slump was a really early one. I guess I would say going back to high school or junior high. And this is, I guess, refreshed in my mind because I just went back to my old, childhood house and was driving around those streets and, talking to my family and just being surrounded by stuff from my past. So it's kind of fresh in that sense. But I remember I grew up in a town called Vallejo, California. It's in Northern California, about maybe two-thirds of the way from San Francisco to Sacramento. So right next door to Napa. And this was like in the 80s and 90s. And at the time, it wasn't a great place to live or grow up. There was a lot of violence, there was a lot of drugs and gang stuff. And I went to like this really underfunded school district. And so all of those things sort of combined, you know, both shaped me, but also informed my my worldview and how I sort of looked at the world around me. And I guess this goes in line with the multi-hyphenate too, because I was always kind of bouncing between worlds. So Vallejo was like a certain way, like you had to act, you had to dress a certain way on the streets, like for survival. You had to dress and act a certain way at school and at home and around your friends. And then I would go to church in right next door in the Napa Valley with my family. And it was just so different over there. I don't know why we started going to church over there, but we went to church in Napa. And so on Sundays, like I would be exposed to this entire world that was um, much more affluent, a lot wider for sure, and just people just acted just very differently than where I was living, the other 6 days of the week. And that always sort of informed my worldview of like, oh, there's much more than just this little sort of insular place in Vallejo that exists, and it gave me like the travel bug. So when it came time to choose a college, I ended up choosing the one that was the furthest on the map that I could still get my dad's like veterans sort of benefit. So I chose San Diego and like UC San Diego. And I think it was in between like high school and college where I initially had that thought that you read about how do you bring like new ideas back to your the people that you care about so much, the community that you care about so much. And so exploring like just became a huge theme in my life. Like I wanted to go out there, I wanted to see what was out there in terms of what me and my friends and my family were into, and then bring these ideas back and be a translator in a sense of like, oh, how come we can't succeed, or how can we look at certain communities or certain people in a way that like, oh, that's not for me, you know? How do you tell people that you love and you trust that why can't it be for you? Like, why can't you do something that's not the norm or not sort of like in the everyday sort of expectation of you and your loved ones? And so that's been a running theme in my life. And that kind of goes back to what you read and in that of like, how do we bring new ideas or good ideas back to the people that I love and the communities that I love, and do it in a way that I'm still speaking their language, but I'm also, trying to bring us all up.
Okay. That brings me to my next question is having had that experience, or like it sounds like you made some kind of choice, right? Maybe you left your hometown for a while to do this exploration. Did you ever find yourself feeling like you had to change an essential part of who you are in order to move forward?
Yeah, every day. Every day was that I had that tug of like, why am I wired this way? Why is everybody that I'm sort of interacting with now, and I'm speaking of like, when I first got to college in UCSD. And so this is the common experience for a lot of college kids that come from, a very um uh I would just say insular kind of place, and you go and you get exposed to this diversity of ideas, that diversity of thought, and you're like, oh, is this a right way to be? Is this how I'm supposed to be, like acting or moving around in the world? And so that tug of like identity was always sort of, I always say it even still is, tugging at me. And it's like, how do you balance what you know to be true about yourself and what you believe in and your values, and what the world is sort of asking of you, what your current situation or your current circumstances are asking of you. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, like that's always sort of been tugging on me. And what was the second part?
I guess it's like, do you remember a specific time in your life where it got to be so like your identity was so questioned, or
Mhm.
like the way that you knew to do things was so in resistance with what you were coming up against that you felt like you needed to fundamentally change? Like, do you remember
Yeah.
specific moments of that?
Yeah. And I there's a time where I actually did change my identity. Growing up, I was like I always considered myself just like a musician. I was a trumpet player from like 3rd grade all the way through, beginning of college. And, I'd perform, I'd do competitions, I went on tour with a drum and bugle corps. And I just did so much around music. So it was like a huge part of my identity. And now I remember a story. I applied to go to UC Berkeley, Cal, and my cousin was there a couple years ahead of me, and she had introduced me to the band director at UC Berkeley. And I remember going with her on a tour of campus and meeting the band director, and him like very desperately like pleading to me like, we need trumpet players for our like marching band, for football games, whatever. Like, we need good trumpet players. And so I told him, I was on tour with the Blue Devils, the drum and bugle corps in Northern California. And he was like, oh my gosh, like, we would love to have you. Like, if you get into the school, like, give me a call, like we can work out like a scholarship thing for music. And so I thought that was my path. I thought I was like gonna get into UC Berkeley, like I was gonna play the trumpet, I was gonna be in band, and I was gonna have part of my college education paid for. I didn't get into UC Berkeley. I just probably, missed the cutoff or whatever. I got into several of the other, comparative schools, but I did not get into there. So, that forced me at that time to rethink like, oh my gosh, like if I'm not gonna be a musician, what am I gonna do? And I was kind of stuck in that way for like freshman year of college. Like, I was like, all right, I still want to do music, but like this school don't have a band. The school that I picked, like, there's not like a good band here, like that I want to do. I'm like, I have to do my own thing, or maybe I'll switch to like singing, because I also sang a lot and performed as a singer. And it just turned out that I didn't actually get rid of music, but I did put it off to the side, but it continued to inform everything that I experimented with in college. And it informed me getting into filmmaking and directing and editing. Like, I had to find like the rhythm or the music in all of those like different art forms. And that was like sort of what made me see like directing or editing a film or editing a video like in that way. I'm like, oh, there's something not right about this, like the music of it is not right. And that's how I sort of filtered my way through the world, in that I wasn't doing music sort of explicitly in terms of like performing music all the time as I was in high school and junior high and elementary school, but it was still informing everything, even my like comedy at the time. So I got into sketch comedy and ended up, directing and performing in sketch comedy videos in the early YouTube days. And I didn't know how to do all that stuff. Like, I didn't know how to like do video editing or anything. But I just taught myself because I'm like, oh, I know how the final product should look like. I know how it should feel like, more so. I know how it should feel like, and it's not there yet. So I'm going to use the tools around me. I'm going to borrow a computer that can actually edit, or I can borrow cameras from people to film these things, and just basically like, taught myself how to do all that stuff. But it came from the music of it. For me, the music really just informed it, like how people spoke, like what was like the rhythm or the melodies between like, comedic lines and timing. Like, I needed to find the music in those things, and I think it worked. I'm still going. Like, I became a professional editor for a 3D animation company after that, and that was off of my self-taught stuff. And just kept going after that. I kept directing, kept designing, but music, I always will say, is my first love. But it, even though I put that identity off to the side for like a little while in terms of explicitly doing music, it was always there. It always will be there for me.
You know what I'm hearing underlying that ability to kind of weave what you already know into future just open possibilities, and to navigate kind of like what the opportunities are, sounds very much like an embodiment of when there's a will, there's a way. And it's a mindset that a lot of people don't have, including myself. Unfortunately, I do get stuck in the mindset of just feeling stuck sometimes. But Is that something that you feel was taught to you or that you had kind of growing up already?
Yeah, I'm I come from an immigrant family, and I actually immigrated here with my parents from the Philippines, and so I think a lot of like that old Filipino sort of way of doing of just like surviving at all costs. If you just think like about Philippine history, it's a history of like colonization and just different fools just trying to come up on our country and like us having us like actually living with it. So that there's a lot of like talk in the Filipino community about assimilation, and we read that in the history books in about the melting pot theory of America versus like the salad bowl, and so that's always sort of been at play, I guess. So that where there's a will, there's a way. Like, is that assimilating if you think about it in that lens, or is it like surviving? Is it a little bit of both? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think the survival sort of instinct like goes back generations. For me, I was very fortunate to have my grandparents live with me when I was growing up, and my parents, and so I learned a lot from them as a kid, and how they sort of lived their lives, and lived out their values. And I guess one of those values was, find a way to make it happen. Like it's not for you to easily sort of give up, and I guess to like call it quits. And so that can also be on yeah, as with like mental health and everything, like on the toxic side too, right? Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to like not quit anything. Like there are plenty of things in your life that you should quit, right? Like if it's
Okay.
not working for you, if it's not like serving you, and if it's not healthy. So just I guess dealing with that is like the where is the will, where there's a will, there's a way. From my grandparents and my parents' sort of upbringing and raising me, I guess I was always just like looking at it with like multiple lenses.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I would try to accomplish things, or I try to be like the best at something. Say for example, like, playing the trumpet or whatever. Like I wasn't satisfied until like I was first chair. And I tried to do that like every year that I was in school, and luckily I was able to do that for most of those years. But every time you're in a fish in an exceedingly larger pond, it becomes more difficult to do. There's always going to be somebody better than you out there, and so that is going to clash with that where there's a will, there's a way. And that's what I sort of learned as I got older, as I moved into different communities and different places around California, and that I wasn't always going to be the best anymore.
Mm.
So did I have the will? Like, was that important to me? Was being the best like actually important to me, or was actually just doing the art, right? Or just existing and just finding joy in just the practice of it.
So when it comes to there's a will that when there's a will, there's a way. And you saying like there can be a toxic aspect of it. Did you ever come up against your own toxicity?
Yeah, yeah. So it's really hard. And so now I would say, yeah, so the still a challenge for me to figure out when to quit things, or when to um adjust my way of doing or way of being. I think that's just kind of one of the hardest things in life in general, is learning like when to stop doing something or when to start doing something else. And this is like, kind of in my face all the time as a business owner now. In that like there is no sort of end date or end sort of state to like business, right? It's always a changing environment. It's always a changing thing with like potential clients or customers, or your own skills or your own sort of schedule. So that balancing act of like, pursuing something to its natural end is always something that I'm like balancing or dealing with. I'm trying to think of a specific example. Do you have a specific example of your own, you didn't know when it was time to quit?
Okay, so I've been pondering this all day because this is something I'm going through right now, is that at, the age of 36, I'm finally learning how to really say no and really putting my own needs first and also being more intentional with what direction I want to take things in my own life. And so in the past, I've been such a people pleaser. And I would stick it out for way too long for things that were not serving me. And, whether that be like a job that wasn't paying me enough or, even just like a career path that was not the one that I wanted, but was the one that I kind of just landed in. It's a very like open energy, but at the same time, like it lacks intention. And so I have recently just been dealing with, well, I'm willing to try things out a little bit, but I'm also much quicker now to redirect if I feel like it's not going to be a good fit. And sometimes this feels very rude for me to do. It feels very like, well, I said yes initially, but now I'm based off of some kind of feeling or some kind of like just something's telling me it's not the right thing and it's draining my energy. And then I have to say, well, I don't think this is the right way to go, and so let's not do this anymore. And I've been getting a little bit faster at that, which is can be one, it's good because then I get to pivot faster and I get closer to where I want to go, but it also doesn't feel good to tell people no sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that is probably the one that I was trying to get to as well. Like saying yes to things or saying yes to people versus saying no. And you've gotten wiser as you've gone on. I think that's what wisdom is, right? Is like, knowing yourself and knowing yourself better. Um, and I guess that was a big part for me. Why was I torturing myself by saying yes to all these social engagements or projects that like I didn't want to do?
Mhm.
And it was really funny. Like at a film festival one time, I met John Cho, the actor. John Cho, when he was like still pretty early in his career, and I was like so starstruck of whatever. Me and my sketch comedy crew, but I remember like one of the things that he told us when we met him, and it was weird. Like it was just him. Like I don't remember how we actually even ran into him. Like, but I think he just stayed after a screening or whatever, and we're just like, "Oh, yo, that's John Cho. Like, let's talk to him."
Is that the
Um,
White Castle?
yeah, yeah, the Harold and Kumar,
Yeah.
and many, many other things. He's amazing. Star Trek, Searching. I think he's in Searching. But he's in a lot of different things. He's awesome, amazing actor. But even early on in his career, he had done like Harold and Kumar at that time, I think, and maybe a couple of other things. We asked them for advice, and like advice is always one of those things. It's like, you could take it with a grain of salt. It may or may not work for you. But one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me, when we were asking him for advice on like how to be and exist in like Hollywood, and do it in a sort of mindful way. He says you never have to do anything you don't want to do. And it seems like a very sort of basic or a pretty straightforward thing to say, but if you think about it in terms of what Hollywood asks of an actor, right? And balancing those demands of, oh, maybe I should take this role because it's what's expected of me, or maybe I should take this role because I might not get another one. And it just his sort of cool demeanor of like saying that thing, I'm like, I believe you, dude. Like, I know you still live by that. And if you look at the roles that he's taken, they're really good roles after Harold and Kumar. Like he's showing off his acting chops, he's showing off his personality, but he's also taking on like non-traditional and not sort of stereotypical roles. And I always think back to that conversation and that piece of advice that he gave us back in the day. I'm like, dude, he's still living it. Like he's still making interesting choices with his career, and that really sort of informed me too from that time of like, if there's something that I don't want to do in my creative career or in my profession, I have to find why it's not sort of resonating with me. I have to find out why, like, my gut is telling me, like, I should not do this. Because there's a reason, right? When we listen to our bodies and our intuition, there's a reason why we initially, don't want to say yes, but and then we say yes and we feel like crap, right? Afterwards, because we're now like, oh, now we're obligated to do something, or now we have to follow through on our word because our word
Mhm.
is bond or whatever. Um, Finding that reasoning why and getting more in tune with yourself is like so important, and I'm glad that you're getting there, and I would say you are there, like, you're just making choices that are more in line with you, and what you want to do. And I think it's asking those hard questions about ourselves of like what matters to us, not just on a daily basis, but like whole, like what are our values, like what do we want to leave in our communities and to the people that matter to us. And I think if you use that as a measuring stick, like those yes or no decisions, or saying yes to things or saying no to things, like becomes a lot easier once you have that measuring stick more in line with yourself.
Yeah, for sure. It is like a very challenging and could be very painful process, especially if you have had a set of values before that you start to question later on. So that brings me on to the next question is like, what values and convictions guide your actions now?
Yeah, so that's always changing, right? But some of the things that I've mentioned that have stuck with me, like I mentioned earlier about Seth Godin surprising and delighting people. I really like doing that. Like, sometimes that means me being sort of a chaos agent in my family or amongst my friends, because keeping people on their toes is sort of important to me, or doing something non-traditional, or being like non-traditional or non-stereotypical in the way that I run my business, or make art, or design or direct. Just finding something that just kind of like, you look at it, you're just like, huh, I never thought about that before. So that value has stuck with me. Diversity is a big value. I really think diversity is the answer to a lot of our current ills. When we tend to think our opinion is 100% correct,
Mhm.
and that there's not any room for other opinions, I think, or points of view. I think we get in a lot of trouble because we don't see people as they are. We don't see people in this like really multifaceted way, and we start to put people in boxes. So I think having a diverse lens and exposing yourself to a lot of diverse sort of art and people and experiences is one of the things that matters a lot to me, and a value that matters a lot to me. I think the third thing, I'm gonna just keep it to three, is I think we need to care more. I think we need to care more about the work that we put out. I think we need to care more about just our everyday interactions with people. One of the things that I love Long Beach. I love living here for many many reasons. The food is incredible. The people are incredible, but the drivers down here, yo, like
Mhm.
the drivers down here are pretty bad, and I think about it all the time in terms of, when I see people crossing the street and there's a driver just like not caring, like not caring. I'm like, we have traffic accidents in the city, and that's increasing like every year, like people getting hit by cars. And I think it's not sort of unique to Long Beach, but I just see it here because I'm every day. It's just like when people don't care about other people, that's how you move around in your car or on the street, then it shows. And it sort of like makes me really angry. That's one of the things that makes me angry. Few things that make me angry is when people don't care about other people. And if we were just a little bit more thoughtful about how people like literally and physically are moving around in the world, and not thinking like our existence is the center of the universe, I think we would just make this world a lot a lot better of a place.
I mean, I highly agree with that. And I think we're in a place in history where we're being very challenged, especially here in the United States, but everywhere, because we are more glued to our phones and we're strapped for resources a lot of the time. And it's like, how do you care for people in a healthy way when a lot of what you see outside is anger?
Yeah. Yeah, I would, there's another term that I like and I say a lot, like, resist the race to the bottom. Like, we're racing to the bottom in a lot of different areas in our lives, right? Like, it's easier not to care about people. It's easier not to, like, look both ways when you're, like, running when your light turns green, when you're driving. It's easier to not follow up with something that you're gonna say. You said you were gonna follow up with, like, so a lot of that sort of like caring that I mentioned is about doing something that's actually more difficult than like the race to the bottom of like easiness, like doing the easy thing. Like our culture and our technologies are making things easier, but at what cost? I think that cost is our humanity and our ability to be in communion with other people and build like in a healthy way. And so, yeah, that race to the bottom is like, really a pet peeve of mine. And you could see it in everything. Like you could see it in people driving. You could see it in people's communication online. You could see it in, what people choose to do with their time. And yeah, just being more thoughtful and mindful and caring more, I think is it's a harder thing, but I think it's the right thing.
How do you make sure that you continue to cultivate your humanity? I know this is a weird way to say it, but it's almost to the point where we need to actually think about that. Like, how do you maintain that ability to connect with a person? Because it's right now, it really is that we're being pulled to not
Mhm.
engage.
Yeah. How do I continue to cultivate my humanity? I think you always have to surround yourself with reminders, like reminders of why you want to keep living, right? Like that's part of it too. It's just like, oh, like we're so strapped for resources or time, or like, how do we get here? Like, if you spend any time with like little kids, like that's a good reminder, right? Like the way that little kids just find joy in just like such the most simple or the most basic things, like blowing on a, what do you call those? The little flower things, dandelions?
Dandelions?
Huh?
Oh, dandelions, yes.
Is that what it is? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
when yeah, just I have a 3-year-old niece, and she's the best thing on the world, and just spending time with her and just seeing how she just loves, like, splashing water or, like, blowing dandelions or, running around in a circle in a stupid, funny way, like, I want to always surround myself with those kinds of reminders, and for me, that's a lot of, spending time with my family, spending time with my friends, but also like spending time with my wife who makes me laugh. I think laughter is just so important in my life as a reminder to, that it's not that serious. Like life isn't that serious in that, we have to, yeah, it's just not that serious.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, like, taking a step back and, like, going outside to get some fresh air,
Yep.
all the stuff that we take for granted that is actually free,
Yeah.
we forget that it's there.
We forget that nature is there. That's a really big one too. Like, I'm lucky that I live close to the water and I'm able to just step outside and just, go for a walk or go for a bike ride, like so close to the water. Water like renews me. So just spending time by the water, being out in nature, going on a trip to like the desert or the mountains, and then just listening to like the sounds of of the world, like and nature in that way. Like there's just so much noise in our day-to-day lives with all of our alerts and notifications and emails and like all these different things pulling on our attention. But like, once you spend time in nature, um, it starts to slow down again. And I think that does something to our bodies as well. I don't know if there's like studies on that or anything, but like I think it, moderates us and maybe, going back to my music analogy, maybe it puts us back in rhythm with everything else around us in ways that maybe our technology does not,
Mhm.
So like, when you need to catch a beat, like go into nature.
Yeah. What is the hardest thing you've ever done?
Ooh, what is the hardest thing I've ever done? Any area?
Yeah.
um, Probably she might not like this, but like getting married.
Okay.
I think I mean in the very, very best way,
Yeah.
like getting married to me was like, oh, I'm not in this for myself anymore. Like
Mm,
I I can't be like this selfish asshole that I've been. Like I'm in a relationship, but I'm also in a partnership with somebody that like I'm accountable to in ways that I have never been to myself, you know? So when I would let myself off the hook in the past for like, oh, I don't need to follow up with my mom when she asked me a question like last week, like she's good, Like my wife would be like, "Oh, have you talked to your mom yet? Like have you asked her this?" Like and it's not like it is not like an annoying thing. It's like a checks and balances kind of thing where like, she makes me better in so many ways and it's difficult. Like, just a constant process, and, yeah, I'm like you, I haven't gotten married I haven't been married, like, too long, we got married 2020 during the pandemic, and, just since then, like, I thought it would be a continuation of, like, our relationship because we were together like years before we got married. I thought it'd just be a natural sort of continuation of how easy and like carefree and everything it was. But there's something about like when you commit to, someone, a partner, whether they be a partner or, having a kid, like it changes the game. Like it completely changes the game where you're just like, yo, like everything that I was doing, it was good and all, but, like, now I feel like I could take it to the next level because I have somebody that has my back. I have somebody that, like, can support me in ways that, like, I wasn't even looking at, like, I
mhm.
wasn't even, like, expecting or whatever. So that was both the biggest surprise and sort of the hardest thing I would say that I've done.
It's interesting because when we started off this conversation, we were talking about like multi-hyphenate and multi-potentialite. It's like when we're single, building up all of these identities is fun. It's a game and like it's like you can collect, right? And kind of maintain too. And then I think getting married, it's like all of a sudden you kind of have to look at how to be responsible in a way that like you can't go, like, I guess, like, full on 100% like wild,
Mhm.
which is in the past, like, I've done that too. Just, like, like, fly this way and then, like, do this stuff over here, and, honestly, I'm still, trying to rein myself in, not in a like, it's not a good or bad even. I wouldn't say it's like that, it's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's not a good or bad at all. Like, and I wouldn't even say, well, maybe it is for certain other people's marriages, but um, in my own personal, it's not a contracting thing. Like, it's not a contracting sort of change. It's more of an expanding change. And I'm like, oh, I'm expanding in ways that I thought I didn't have it in me. I didn't think I would be able to expand in this way. But just growing with someone and adapting and learning like on a day-to-day basis, like you can't be on your bullshit anymore. Like, and that's it, that is a great thing, like, and I know it's not like that for every relationship, but like, for the ones that are like, more power to you. And I see it now. I'll tell everybody else, I see it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that comes to the next question, which is somewhat similar. It's like, are there any problems and the reason why I'm asking this is because you seem to be such a problem solver. Are there any problems that have persisted and that you struggle with solving to this day?
Yes, I do like to consider myself a problem solver. That can also be a toxic sort of trait um, to a lot of sort of immigrant kids and Asian American kids. But as a problem solver for say business problems and the types of business problems I solve for my clients, I guess one thing that I always have to come to terms with, say like I'm doing some consulting or I'm helping somebody with their marketing, I can only give them so much sort of like, oh, like I could see the problem, I could see this is exactly how to solve it. Like I know how you can get out of this mess that you're in or the situation that you're in and like have success. I could say that and I could lay out the entire plan or strategy on how they specifically and uniquely can do it. And then once I give them that plan, it's still up to them to like execute it, and still up to them to like take the action to follow through. And I guess the hard part for me as a problem solver is like really being patient with the people that I work with, but also understanding that like everyone comes from a very specific place. Everyone has their own gifts and abilities, but also their own trauma, right? Like we don't. I mean, in certain businesses, we talk about like the trauma that we sort of live with on a day-to-day basis, but like in a lot of other sort of business settings, we kind of leave that to the side. We think people are these like straightforward avatars of, say, I am a Ayurveda practitioner, or I own a sake shop, or I own the restaurant like that opened last Monday, that is bringing all of these like influencers into town, and foodies and everything. Like we try to put people in this box, but like people are really multifaceted, and so a really hard part for me as a problem solver is like really taking that into account and like looking at people in a holistic sense, and
Mhm.
looking at other business owners and some of my clients in a really holistic sense of like, oh, like it's very simple to me as a problem solver how you could solve this problem in your business, but like you're not just running your business, you're running your life as well. And you might have kids, or you might have pulls on your schedule, or your attention, that kind of is an obstacle for that plan or that strategy that we laid out. So I think just being more patient with people, and just being like taking into account like, hey, we are whole people. We are multifaceted people running businesses, or running ventures, or doing hobbies, or whatever. Like, and giving people a little bit more, I guess, not no, the word that I'm looking for is not slack. What is it? A little bit more grace. There you go. Yeah, giving people a little bit more grace. I hope that people are doing that to me. I've definitely gotten grace for my shortcomings in different ways. And so like, how can I offer that to other people when we're sort of like so sort of being wired to especially on social media, of like you're presenting this like perfect picture of like our business, or a perfect picture of our lives. Like it's not. It's ugly, it's messy, and I think we should talk about that more, and definitely move around in that way, and give grace to people and their different sort of life setups.
Beautifully said. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the trauma piece too. I don't think people realize that, especially in business, the reason why you may be stuck at a certain place has a lot to actually do with you. I didn't realize this when I first started doing business. I didn't think I would have to deal with being a business owner. And I kind of
Yeah.
like got on the train way late, but the fact that most of my problems in growing my business have everything to do with my perception of myself and my self-doubt, and just and a lot of my history. So it's it's very, very clear to me that, like, when you deal with businesses, at the end of the day, especially the small ones, you're dealing a lot with
Mhm.
the human factor.
Yeah, yeah, and that and you're exactly right. Like that human factor is going to be the limiting factor in a lot of this, like desired business growth, or desired um, results that you think like, oh, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to have this much money by the end of the year, and like you think it's just a straight line, but no, like it has to go in you and around you and through you. Your business has to do that. It has to sort of flow through you. And I think when we read sort of success stories on the internet, and we see people posting about, oh, my business made this much money or whatever, like we're denying that other part, and we're not being real about that other part. And like, oh, tell me about the stuff that like you are keeping. Like, tell me about the stuff that, prevented you from going from your, $0 to your first like, $1,000 in your bank account, your business bank account, because it's not a straight line. It's a very, very zigzag line. And yeah, like that probably is the second hardest thing that I've done in my lifetime, is like become a business owner. And I've been doing it for a while now, and I love it. Like I love the freedom that it gives me in a lot of different areas and of my life. And being able to live out my values in a way that, I don't have to water down. Like, I own everything. But yes, on the flip side, you own everything.
Mhm.
Like, you own all the mistakes, you own all the things you didn't do right. But, if you want to know yourself, like, become a business owner, because you'll learn right quick that, it's a lot harder than it looks from the outside.
Okay. So we're going to close out with this question. I think it's a great one to close out with is because you're not only a business owner yourself, but you advise business owners. What would you, if you could give any piece of advice to someone who is stuck in their own shit, right? What would be the best thing you can tell them?
To let go. And that's a hard thing to do, and it's different for every person, it's different for every business owner, but, like, there are certain things that you're holding on to, and this is, unique to you. There are certain things that you're holding on to and believing to be true that are not true. And that, I guess, is the hardest thing, and that's something that, I like to work with other small business owners on to figure that out. And it's not around, like, everything in business. It's usually around, like, creative or marketing, or video. But, figuring that out, like, what you need to let go of, like, and unweigh you down is, like, really important, I think, to get to that next level. And it's going to be different for every person.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. I hope that is a piece of information to meditate on because that is something that we can all just kind of allow to sink in. It is a pondering piece. So I am going to go ahead and I will ponder that too. Thank you so much for being on today, Abe. I've learned a lot and I've had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Valerie. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for playing.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you next time.
Peace.